Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. Seems like we're back so soon again. Lovely to see you all. I'm your chair, as you know, Councillor Rachel Carnack. I'm afraid I've got an allergy at the moment, so I might cough a bit, so just ignore it. I don't think I'm going to infect any of you. It's just hay fever, but it sounds worse than it actually is, but it might annoy you. The role of this committee is to scrutinise performance and take a closer look at topics of interest across the council services, making recommendations to Cabinet where necessary. The committee also deals with the call-in of Cabinet decisions and decides whether these decisions should be referred back to the decision maker to think again. Also present this evening, I'm pleased to say we have Councillor Connie Nolan. Connie is Member of Cabinet for Community Safety, Engagement and Enforcement, and she's been invited this evening to answer questions about specific issues under her portfolio area and linked to this evening's special themed report, which, as you all know, is our annual review of the Canterbury Community Safety Partnership. Just some housekeeping. Again, I'm sure you all know this, but there's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass door behind you to my left and through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please do not attempt to use the exit to my right, as that is not currently in use due to works going on at the Westgate Towers. And please muster at the Tower House car park. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I would like to remind everyone as well that the meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you are seated in the public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of staff aware who can direct you to where to sit. The meeting is also being minuted. Right, okay, so I think probably you all know most of that anyway. So, Pippa, apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies from Councillors Butcher and Worley.
Okay, and substitute members?
Councillor Naomi Smith for Councillor Butcher and Councillor Mellish for Councillor Worley.
Okay, all right. And do we have any declarations of interest by members or officers? Mary, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Director on the Kinenco Board.
Thank you very much. And there are no public speakers for this meeting. So, as I said, it's Community Safety Partnership theme this evening, pages 6 to 29 of the report. And we're here to note the report and receive presentations. As we know from previous years, this has been a very chunky item. So we've taken it out so that it doesn't get squashed in with other meaty subjects. So it's just this one item this evening because it usually covers a lot of issues across the district. So first of all, we're going to receive a presentation from Director of People and Head of Locality, which is, we're going to hear from Marie Royal. Then we're going to hear from Chief Inspector Paul Stoner from Kent Police. And then Laura McCourt, Head of Locality, is going to speak. And then after that, Cabinet Member Connie Nolan is going to speak. And yeah, okay, so over to you, Marie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. This committee is the nominated committee for crime and disorder. There is a statutory requirement for the council to work with partners to do an annual strategic assessment and produce a community safety partnership plan. I am the chair of the Community Safety Partnership for the Canterbury District, and it does cover the district. And part of my service through Laura delivers community safety functions and enforcement functions on behalf of the council. In June 2023, this committee agreed a 3-year plan and the priorities, and were part of that priority setting. So 25-26 is the last year of that plan. Each year we do a strategic assessment. That means that we work with partners, we get partner information, some of it's sensitive, to identify what the trends are, what the hotspots are, what the themes are, and we revisit the priorities every year. The priorities that are outlined in the report that the Community Safety Partnership support are thematic priorities. So they are priorities that apply right across the district, whether it's rural, coastal, city centre, the priorities are common across the district. In year, we have a number of tactical groups that form regularly, either to progress actions that are in the plan or to respond to live issues in localities or emerging themes and trends as they come up. I think last year, Herne Bay was discussed last year, and some issues were raised, as was delivery riders in the city centre. And you'll be hearing some of the feedback today in the slides about some of the targeted operations that took place. So, you know, the partnership does respond to issues and themes that councillors raise. The report that you've got in front of you is an oversight. So it's an oversight of the plan. It's an oversight of what was achieved last year. We've took a different approach because we took on board the comments of this committee last year, which asked for a simpler report and maybe the actions being presented in a different way. So the action tracker that you've got as Appendix 1 gives you more detailed outline of the actions, what happened, and progress with a RAG rating. On that point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to hand over to Paul to do the presentation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You've got... Okay. So I might go slightly off tangent here because I have prepared a little bit of an update around things as well outside of the CSP presentation that we've got here. But obviously the priorities that we've agreed initially were disrupting serious organised crime, including county lines and sexual exploitation, disrupting ASB, including environmental offences, and then safeguarding and have vulnerable person focus, including prevent, duty and hate, and then safety in the nighttime economy, including violence against women and the girls, and then obviously a focus around young people, including higher and further education referrals. So, successful operations that we've done over the past 12 months. So Project Zebra very much dovetails in with Project Vigilant. I think I've updated you before in relation to this. This is an operation that plainclothes and uniformed officers do in the city centre, and it's around targeting predatory behaviour before it actually happens. I think I used the same analogy last year. It's a bit like the Minority Report, where we have plainclothes officers spotting those males or females who are hanging around at key locations at key times, preying on potentially vulnerable inebriated people, and we then have uniformed officers who go in and intervene and take them away. We have had notable successes with those, where we've arrested people who are known sex offenders who have been doing exactly that type of behaviour. We have bespoke operations throughout the year focusing on ASB, Op Scramble. They generally tend to run throughout the half-term periods. And again, it's not rocket science. They are officers in high vis in key locations at the key times, targeting and dealing with the ASB, whether it be off-road motorbikes, whether it be scooters, e-scooters, or whether it be youths over on the coast, etc. Op Sunbeam was a successful operation we ran in the build up to Christmas. Clearly the nighttime economy of the city gets very busy. That was an uplift of officers in and around the city to deal with the nighttime economy, Christmas parties and things like that. And then Op Tank, that was around the reducing of the serious violent crime in Herne Bay. So despite the public meeting last night, Serious violent crime in Herne Bay has actually significantly reduced to the point where it's been removed as a grip zone, and the grip zones were scored on harm, and that was around serious violent crime, which is murder, GBH, robberies, sexual offences, such as those offences, not ASB, theft, shoplifting, which are deemed lower offences. But because of the results that we've had over there and the harm scores have reduced, the grip zone has been removed, which sadly means we've lost a large amount of funding that we had been using in the past to be able to deal with serious violent crime. Op Odin is a retail crime initiative. It's been really, really successful, so successful in fact that it's now been rolled out across the county. And again, that is targeting repeat shoplifters in predominantly the city and also the retail industrial parks on the outskirts. We've really focused in on those repeat offenders and worked with the shops that suffer the most with the retail crime. And that's been widely received and warmly received by the local retail partnership. Op Love, Op Nepeta, we have had a significant rise in the theft of motorbikes. That does extend out to the coast, where we saw a huge rise in the number of mopeds that were being stolen, predominantly by youths who were then driving around causing antisocial behaviour, riding on pavements, burning them out, not necessarily stealing them to profit from it, but just simply being a nuisance and riding around on them. Part of that operation actually involved the distribution of air tags as a preventative measure. We were successful in bidding for some problem-solving money, where we've done numerous public engagements offering out the air tags to the public for them to put them on their bikes, so they can be, if they are stolen, they can be tracked and we can get some positive results from those. That operation is still ongoing and it's a long-term commitment. And then Op Nuisance is the summer uplift for the coastal towns. Every year we have a dedicated resource, normally on zero cost, no cost, where we cancel officers' rest days for them to work over the summer to ensure that we've got sufficient resilience and resources over on the coast. So delivered actions, obviously as part of the actions we've done, I'm not going to read through all of those, but because this is more Lacey's world that she operates in, but there's been lots of stuff that's been done. So zero tolerance training to a further 49 staff and 22 businesses. There's been road crossing signs in partnership with KCC to provide a safe crossings between Windsheep and St George's Roundabout. There's been the formation of the Purple Partnership, which is a partnership led by Canterbury City Council and Kent Police, featuring sports and activities providers. I was privileged enough to go last week actually to the Best Bar None Awards for the city, which is a joint partnership piece of work that incorporates all the driving standards in relation to nighttime economy and licensed premises and the standards that they set. And we've now got the most premises signed up to Best Bar None, I think, in the country. We've got youth provisions at Herne Bay, Family Hub delivered by Herne Bay, Taekwondo, and there's also been a Commission of Youth survey by the Prince of Wales Youth Trust to identify what activities young people want in the district for 25-26. So there's still some work to do. Again, I'm not going to read through all those. I'll try and pick out the salient points. So we're doing some work around safe havens, locations where vulnerable people or people who are in distress can go to, and they'll be strategically located across various towns and locations that are accessible. There's campaigns that we're running on drug use and safe nights out. And there's also campaigns being run to support victims of sexual assault, to dispel the myths around court processes for rape victims and victims of sexual assault. And there's also a lot of work that's being done, certainly by my child centre policing team, around supporting schools and supporting young people and deterring them away from serious violent crime. So current plans we've got, you've got Give It a Go, which is a sports and activities event held at Canterbury Rugby Club to encourage health and wellbeing and diversification, as well as a chance for residents to engage with key partners. There's also the continuation of the funding for redeployment of CCTV cameras, or so cameras that we can move around the district, which is really useful and helpful. We've also got prevent training, which is very relevant at the moment. Certainly around for elected members. And then we've also got the replenishment of the emergency trauma packs, which are a fabulous bit of kit that again are dotted all around the city and the coastal towns that basically we can get to in the event of people suffering serious trauma. that it? Oh, that was quick. Sorry, I'll just unlock my computer. Oh, hang on. So that was the slideshow, but what I'll do now is I'll go through a little bit more granular detail, if you'll indulge me. So over the past 12 months, we have seen excellent progress through strong partnership working with the council and other key agencies. There's some key crime stats that I just want to run with you, because ultimately we are accountable and we are held to account for our performance. So victim-based crime in Canterbury, and this is Canterbury, the whole of the district, not just the city, is down 3.4%, which equates to 437 fewer victims. There's also our solved rates of crime. We're now solving 12.7% of all reported crimes, which is above the force average. And our out-of-court disposals is significantly up. It's up 26.5%. Across the other categories, so violent crime, that's down 2.5%, robberies down 23%, shoplifting's down 6.5%, criminal damage down 36%, and burglaries down 52%. They are all as a direct result of the strong partnership working that we've got with the council and our other partner agencies, and we can't do some of this stuff without them being a key member to that. However, that said, there are some challenges that we face moving forward. One of those is the perception and fear of crime. There is a lot of misinformation and false reporting on social media, which often distorts the reality of crime levels, undermining public confidence, although we do accept that the public don't report everything to us. And that's something that we are taking forward and we are trying to work hard to overcome. If we don't know about it, we cannot deal with it. Obviously, misinformation on social media, we don't comment on social media, we just get involved in a back and forth debate. So we don't go in there and fact check people's posts. Issues on the coast, obviously we are aware of the public concerns following the public meeting last night in Herne Bay of the depth and breadth of the feeling around ASB and criminality that's affected that local community. We have been responding to this over the past couple of months and have taken several steps already to deal with the problems. I am aware there is an underreporting of ASB and crimes. However, I can only implore the public and also via you, the councillors, to get into them and ask them to report it to us. We need a true and accurate picture of what the issues are. So Herne Bay specifically, because I'm sure it's going to come up later on, I've focused the data down for Heron Ward in particular, as that was a grip zone at the time, and that's obviously a main focus of much of what has been reported. But the key points to this, and I've not sugarcoated it, arson and criminal damage is down 53%, which is a reduction of 164 offences in Herne Bay. Robbery is up 67%, but that's an increase of 6 offences. Sexual offences are down 27%, which is a fall of 7 offences. Theft from motor vehicle is up 115%, which is actually 15 offences. It's risen from 13 to 28, but obviously 115% sounds quite dramatic. And theft of motor vehicles is up 80%, and that's up 16 offences from 20 to 36. But violence against a person, which is one of the key drivers for the serious violent crime, is down 6%, and all victim-based crime is down 11%. On a positive, and I do see this as a positive, crimes against society are up. So crimes against society are state crimes, so they'll be your drugs possessions, they'll be your possession of offensive weapons, public order offences, where there is no victim as such. So drugs offences in Heron Ward are up 74%. So that's up 34 offences. Possession of weapons is up 37%, and public order offences are up 19%. And the reason I say that's positive is because they are all generally as a direct result of proactive stop and searches, i.e. we find those offences. They are not offences that people phone up and say, I've got a load of drugs on me. So we will go and find them. So the fact that those numbers are up indicates to me, and I see the number of stop searches that are being submitted, is an indicator to me that my officers are out in Herne Bay proactively getting in people's pockets, turning people over and stopping and searching them. For the corporate point of view, legally, professionally and proportionately as well. So we have got an operation in the pipeline, and it is pretty much near to being launched, and that is going to be Op Platinum, and that focuses around the clear, hold, build methodology. So it's going to be a joint partnership operation with key individuals identified who we are basically coming after. We will be looking to take possession of houses, again, appropriately and proportionately, that are associated with ASB and criminality, and we will be looking to arrest, charge and remand those responsible. And you will see a marked improvement in the visible presence of police officers in Herne Bay, which I know some have already commented upon and said they have noticed that. And this work has already started, and we will update the public and yourselves with what we have done and what we are doing moving forward. So the Chief Constable has made it very clear our towns and city centres must be an inhospitable place for those who want to come and commit crime and antisocial behaviour. We have invested heavily in our neighbourhood policing, with 7 additional officers who are now part of our community safety unit, and that includes a dedicated neighbourhood task force for both the city and, come July, the coastal towns. So there will be a sergeant and 7 officers based out at Herne Bay. I've already touched on the grip zones, so I won't touch on that again, and I've already covered off some of the successful operations that we've done. We have been successful in putting a bid in for the expansion of District Watch. District Watch, for those that don't know, did fall by the wayside slightly over the last couple of years, but that's now been taken back on by the Business Improvement District. It should be a self-funding operation, and essentially it's radios in the local shops and retail premises, and there's training given, and obviously the police have the radios, and it's that direct link between the police and the retail. We have secured funding for additional 20 new radios. I think the cost is around about £12,000, and they're going to be given out to the shops and the communities that sign up to it. At the moment, I don't think District Watch extends all the way out to the coastal towns. It did, but the buy-in from the local community, largely probably because of the cost, was pretty lacklustre. So but the ambition is to extend it out to Herne Bay and Whitstable at some point in the future, once we've embedded it and we can grow it so it's self-sustaining in the city. So the closing remarks for me is there's much to be proud of. We are committed to building on this progress. Our investment in neighbourhood policing is already making a difference, and we are eager to continue working with you, attending public engagements and parish council meetings to ensure that Canterbury remains a safe and thriving community. Do I open for questions, Marie, or do I?
Not yet.
Not yet. You'll have to hold those questions, sorry.
Wait a few moments, Marie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. And I think the key thing to say as well is that these issues are not the responsibility of any one particular or sole agency. So some of the issues that Paul's spoken to you about tonight, and levels of crime and crime trend data, yes, that, you know, it's definitely the police's responsibility, but the wider issues are the responsibility of lots of different partners, and that's the purpose of the partnership. It's about bringing partners together, collective action, collective responsibility to get the widest and best impact that we can for the residents in our district. And I'm going to hand over to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to really touch on the report, and I hope what you'll see is a theme going through there, that the focus that we've really taken is on prevention, detection and enforcement. You'll see through the Appendix 1 that Marie's referred to, that on all of the action points that we've agreed and we've sat and we've reviewed, we have made significant progress. There is more work that we know we need to do, but through the engagement of the partnership and through the actions of the team, we have been able to make significant headway with the plan. This has been my first time kind of sitting and going through and doing the review of the strategic plan this year, and what I was really taken by was really the appetite by all of the agencies to want to pull together. As Marie said, it is about that partnership work and to address the issues that we face as a district, and looking at, when we're doing the assessment, making sure we're hearing the voices of yourselves. So when we had the councillor workshops, making sure we were asking you, what were you getting that information on? Taking that information, looking at overlaying that with the data, and getting that anecdotal evidence as well from what we're hearing from officers. So we've tried to pull that all together and ensure that the plan remains really focused on what we're facing as a district, and ensuring that we will be able to achieve what we're putting down there for everyone. Thank you.
Laura and Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. As the Cabinet person with the portfolio for safety, it's really important that if people have concerns, they know they can come directly to me and talk to me. I know there was a public meeting last night, and I'd like to thank Councillor Dan Watkins and Councillor Liz Harvey for organising that. I've had a report back on it from Marie, and I know that they were very much in listening mode, and we are putting together a plan of action, which of course we will work with you on, because as everybody is saying, it's all about partnership. None of us have the power to change anything by ourselves, but by working in partnership with other authorities and other agencies, we actually get collective power. And of course, the best power that we have is the power of our local residents to trust that we are doing the very best. And we need to have a very positive attitude towards that. I am in awe of the work that the police officers and the council enforcement officers do, because they very much go beyond. I see that in action. And also I know that the problems that we have in our district, because it is a district plan, is replicated across the county, because I also am the representative and attend the Police and Crime Commissioner panel, and I listen to the questions which are put together by other people. The question that I have put, which will be dealt with by the Police and Crime Commissioner panel for the next one coming up, is about, is there a county-wide problem with off-road bikes? Because I know off-road biking is causing an awful lot of problems in our district. We're not allowed to ask parochial questions, they call it. So the question will be sort of, is there a problem in the county? And my supplementary will then be, what can we do about it in the district? So it's really important that councillors are assured that we are very much in listening mode. We very much take what councillors tell us their residents are feeling and go to the relevant agencies. Already, I've had a briefing with Marie, Dan, and we're putting together an action plan, which we will obviously involve the councillors in the Herne Bay area in, because it's, as I say, it's important that we do involve everybody. And I just want to say thank you actually to the police and to the enforcement officers for the job that they do. And as I say, you don't see everything that goes on. Over the last 2 years, I've been seeing behind the scenes, and I'm very, very impressed. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nolan. And I'd like to thank Marie and Laura as well for the report, because it gives a lot of detail. I know I say this every time, and I know we have an all-councillor briefing, but I think it's very useful if all councillors refer to this as well when they're dealing with issues, because there is so much information in here about how the community safety partnership operates and how enforcement works as well. And I think that, you know, that level of detail is very useful to have, to be able to then talk to residents as well where they have concerns. And as ever, thank you. It's nice to see you back, Chief Inspector Stoner, and thank you for your input. So I'll open it out now. Yes, Councillor Bland.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. First of all, I'd like to say to Paul Stoner how much I appreciate, and all the working I've had with Paul Stoner has been very impressive, and I'm very impressed with his leadership of the police in the district. So let me say that from the outset, because I know the work that you do, especially around issues to do with security and all the rest of it. Two questions really, slightly different, and thanks to Councillor Nolan for mentioning the off-road biking issue. I've been asked to raise the off-road biking issue as well this evening. So, I mean, Paul, you may have an answer to this to some extent. Basically, certainly there has been in recent weeks a lot of concern around the Royal Pavilion area, just off Old Park, etc., about off-road biking, and a number of residents have been talking about making reports to the police and not getting any response, which has been a concern. I note in the report on page 8 that there's a statement there about multiple operations have taken place focusing resources on tackling off-road biking. I'm sure that's the case, and I've been made aware of some of that myself. I'm just wondering whether there is any success in that, because we're not seeing any decline from the resources that have been put in. That's one concern, and whether, in a sense, there needs to be a different way of tackling the problem. I'm not sure what that might be, but it does seem to me that it might help to have a lot of discussion with local people that are experiencing that problem quite a lot, and clearly that's happening a lot in the Old Park, and really with an open mind to look at ways in which engaging the community in tackling the problem alongside enforcement issues might actually improve it. Part of the concern, of course, is that off-road biking is actually an environmental crime. It's destroying a very precious environmental resource there. And there's been another example of that in terms of there being the recent fire that appears to have been arson. I don't know, I can't ask what's happening about that, but I mean, I would hope if it was arson there, that there will eventually be some success in terms of the investigation. So that's one set of questions around off-road biking. The other question is, I note under the issues about nighttime economy, slightly different question, work that's been going on there, and again, that's been quite impressive. But this is a very specific question, and I haven't seen it in the report. I may have missed it, so apologies if I have. But I'm interested to know, because certainly it was a big concern, the amount of spiking that was going on in Canterbury. Do we have any evidence that the efforts to tackle spiking have been successful? Is spiking coming down? And is there more that needs to be done in terms of premises that are actually selling alcohol to ensure that there's work to actually bear down on spiking? I'm interested in that because I'm chair of the licensing committee as well, and it would be interesting to know answers to those two questions, basically.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bland. Yes, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. I'll do the spiking one first because that's one I'm going to remember, and you might have to come back to you on the other one. So, yeah, so spiking is a complicated issue, and I have to choose my words carefully. So we do a lot of education with the freshers. When they turn up, we remind them about the issues of spiking. We inform them how to prevent spiking from happening. We give them a lot of safeguarding advice. We've issued the drink stoppers. We've issued the covers that go over your drinks. There's lots of stuff that we've done. That's one aspect of the CSP, the safeguarding plan. But in some respects, it actually then hamstrings us, because people go out into the nighttime economy. They will then say they've been spiked because they can't remember what happened. When you then break it down and you review the CCTV and you actually speak to them, they've had 2 bottles of wine, 5 Malibu and Cokes, and you actually say to them, well, why do you think you've been spiked? And they normally say, well, I can normally handle my drink. So what we have done is we've sent off urine samples to try and trace if there's anything in the urine. 99% of those come back negative. There's no evidence from the CCTV that the drink was spiked. It's their perception and their fear of crime. Now, we've done really well in educating people, but by informing people about this potential issue, you then almost feed their, not paranoia, but you raise the concerns with them. So, but we have to believe the victim. We want people to come forward and tell us that their concerns, if they think they've been spiked. We will investigate it, and we will investigate it to a proportionate degree. What I would say is that all of the licensed premises that we work with in the city are really proactive and really pro-police in this. Again, they will report any concern of spiking. And the way the Home Office accounting rules work is that the minute it's been reported, unless you've got additional verifiable information to the contrary, that report stands. So sexual offences, specifically in the grip zone of Westgate, are actually down 44% over the last rolling year. So the work that we have been doing around the education, but also around the enforcement side of it, because it dovetails in with the Project Vigilant and Project Zebra, actually is proving very successful. And we are seeing less and less spikings, and they are seasonal. They normally coincide with September when all the students come. It then drops, and then we see a load at Christmas, and then it drops right off again through till September. So it's a very complex issue that isn't necessarily easily resolved. Does that sort of answer it?
Yeah, that's very reassuring. I mean, I had a feeling that something must be improving, and I think you've given some evidence that it is, and certainly that kind of multi-agency working around it is showing
what we don't see,
results.
What we don't see is so we have a spiking, but we don't then see the subsequent sexual assault that you would expect to go with it. That doesn't happen. But because the spiking affects our harm scores. So of course, the more spikings we have, the harm score rockets. The Chief Constable then goes, Paul, what are you doing? Canterbury, the harm score's gone through the roof. And then we provide the context around the background to it. And it's like, well, actually the problem's not as bad as what the perception and the misinformation of crime is. But again, we have to be really careful because we want people to report this to us. Because for every 100 that we get, one may actually be a proper spiking, and we want to know about it.
Well, that's really good news, and yeah, I mean, it's good that you're still encouraging people to report it, because that's also essential. If people don't report it, then nobody's going to be able to tackle it.
Excellent, and that's the Best Bar None scheme in a nutshell. The Best Bar None scheme that we work with all the partners, and the fact that we've grown it, the fact that we've got more and more premises that are signing up to it, and we celebrate the successes. They are the ones that are driving the standards around crime prevention. And as I say, some of the crime prevention stuff that we've got, the violence against the person is down 17% in Westgate Ward. That's not solely down to the police. That's down to those licensed premises, the door staff, the council enforcement officers, everybody that's driving that down.
Thank you. And before we move on to the other question about the off-road bikers, Councillor Nolan just wanted to come in as well, if that's...
I'm really pleased you've given me the opportunity to talk about this, because it's part of the bits that you don't see. So as Chief Inspector Paul Stone says, it spikes when the students arrive. Sorry, that's an unfortunate way of saying it. It increases when the students arrive. So it's tackled very proactively by the universities themselves. So if you imagine, you know, sort of you've got a young 18-year-old away from home, anxious to make friends, and the university and particularly the student unions work together, the student support and the student unions work together to make sure that the right kind of message goes out. It used to be a problem that some student societies had massive sort of intake of alcohol to do with their initiation. That's been completely stamped out now. That doesn't happen anymore. And the bit that you don't see, which I am incredibly impressed by, is that during Freshers' Week, there is a team of us, and I say us because I join it. There's a team of us, police, council enforcement officers, the officers from the BID, and the street pastors. This is very much partnership working, and we go around the city while the freshers are sort of being taken out by the students' union and that, and we are checking. We're checking on so many different things, and we're also checking to make sure that the licensed premises have a proper door guard there. It's very, very proactive. And then we meet up and discuss what we've seen. The police take back what they need to do. The council enforcement officers take back what they need to do. And I don't know if you've ever come across the Street Pastors, but they are absolutely brilliant organisation. They do exactly what the name is. They go out during the hours when young people are in the city and make sure that nobody is taken advantage, or hopefully nobody's taken advantage of. If there's anybody found in a doorway intoxicated, they help to sort them out. And that's the sort of thing that you won't perhaps be aware of. And that's the sort of thing, as I mentioned, I'm absolutely in awe of these people who do this on a voluntary basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. And I think that's one thing, seeing more coming through licensing as well, of more door staff being a part of the licensing process now, which I think is, you know, in some ways it's a shame, but I think it's very welcome that there is that extra protection and security for those people not there, but also those people using venues. And I think that's a, as I say, a welcome addition to our licensing at the moment. So thank you. And off-road biking then, it's the big one for all of us, I think.
Thank you. Just one last thing, Marie kindly reminded me about it. Obviously, we've also got the safe havens and the safer routes. And obviously, we do have a really proactive licensing department as well in Canterbury with the police and the council. They do a lot of licensing reviews. So where we have venues that are causing significant issues, we do work with them and we do review their licenses. But the safer routes was all part of the safer streets bid 4, wasn't it? And obviously you'll see the signs for those all around the city. So it's all of those little things that all come together to make it a safer city. So off-road motorbikes. So yes, we do operations in relation to this. I'll be brutally honest, they are sporadic, they are seasonal. We do them in key locations where we have lots of reports of it. So again, if people aren't reporting it as ASB, we're not going to necessarily know it's there, so we won't necessarily take action in that particular area. When we do the operations, they are generally productive. We do issue lots of what they call Section 59 warnings around the antisocial use of their vehicles, and that can be the actual bike they're using as well as the vehicle they're using to drive the bikes to the location. We do seize bikes and we do seize the vehicles that are being used as well, but it is a graduated process. So if there's one incident, we'll go in with the Section 59 warning, and then after that we'll seize the bike or seize the vehicle if it carries on. We do have to prioritise based on threat, risk and harm what operations we do. I would love to do more of them, and the investment in neighbourhood policing that the Chief has given us will allow us to do that moving forward. The fact that we've doubled our neighbourhood task force, because it's neighbourhood task force are the ones that do these operations on a daily basis really, but they will be doing everything from modern day slavery operations, targeting car washes. They'll do the brothels that we've had in the city. They'll do operations over on the coast, drugs warrants. They'll do so many different varied aspects of it, which all obviously have higher threat, risk and harm than what potentially a off-road motorbike would. But that's not to say that the ASB being caused by the off-road motorbike is having a significant impact on that local community. So what my expectation would be is that the local beat officers, where every district or every ward has now got a local beat officer, they should be getting out into the community to understand what their top 3 priorities are. And then based on those top 3 priorities, they should be then putting the operations together for the neighbourhood task force to come in and do. But if generally, and this is a bit of a sweeping generalisation, most of the time members of the public simply want resolution to dog fouling, litter, or general ASB. It's not necessarily specific to that particular thing. So, but we do surveys, we do hold surgeries, we do have drop-in centres, we are communicating through My Community Voice. So my plea is for the members of the public to tell us so that we can then go back and say, well, you said we did, this is what we did. And then we feed back in and have that two-way communication with you. But yeah, I mean, I suppose the answer is that we do it. I'd like to do more, but I have a finite amount of resources available that allow us to do everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that you have finite resources, and I understand the problem that you're facing in that regard. I certainly wish that you got more resources. I was once on the Kent Police Committee, and I know it's quite a different world now to what it was in the mid-1980s. So I do sympathise with that. But thanks for that, and I think that's a very positive message to actually take out to the public, to actually sort of say, be specific about off-road biking and where it's happening, so that it enables you to look at the numbers and where it's occurring, so that if you are going to do an operation, which of course isn't going to be publicised, but if you are going to do an operation, then it's likely to be more effective. And I hope it reduces the number of people that are driving bikes in vans from elsewhere in the county to come and do off-road biking in the Canterbury district, in sites that they're basically wrecking. And if we're able to stop the people that come in from elsewhere in Kent, largely, we may actually be more effective in reducing the amount of off-road biking. But so thanks for that.
Well, I think so. Just another point is that enforcement is only one arm of it. There needs to be the longer term problem solving solution wrapped around it, and that can be anything from target hardening to education. How can we prevent them from actually accessing the sites in the first place? And it's things like that that we then work with the CSP to try and resolve, and also the landowners. Now, we have had pots of money available to us in the past to sort of do that sort of work, but the pots of money that we're able to access do have fairly stringent rules around how we can spend it. But we do look at all of that side of it, because we want to reduce ASB. I'm held to account for that performance, and if I can reduce it, then that's what I expect, and that's what I want to do.
Thank you very much for that. Right, I will now move to Councillor Smith, and then we have Mellish, Mackenzie and Jupe and what.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your very extensive report. I'm actually here as a stand-in for Jean, who's not a Whitstable councillor, but I am a Whitstable councillor, so I'm going. We don't have, and I'm sea salt award, and we don't have matters of crime. We do have a lot of shoplifting. We have a lot of shoplifting because we've got a retail park, but we actually get a lot of across Whitstable, and I think it's happening across Herne Bay as well. We are getting seems to be an increase in aggressive shoplifting, where you get a gang of lads, well, actually young people tend to be, a gang of young people go in and just take everything off the shelf. It's now got to the point in Whitstable, because we don't have a police station in Whitstable, they just don't bother to report it, because it takes too long for anybody to bother to come out. Even the CCTV doesn't bother to get looked at. Oh, that's what I get told. So it has become a problem and it's young people who are who are working behind the tills in our co-ops, our Tesco Express, who are being quite aggressive. It's frightening for them, and this is often their first job. It's a part-time job. I just wondered, I noticed on your thing that the whole retail crime was quite low, this shoplifting was seen as quite low, but I think this form of aggressive shoplifting is on the rise. And I've actually been in 2 shops in Whitstable and witnessed it. I've seen it happen as well, where they just go, we're taking it all, basically. Just wondered what the policies and stuff are.
So I'm sort of glad you asked that, because over the last 2 months, there's been a real push and a real drive, and we haven't quite done it yet. We're waiting for the first test case. So in the past, you'd basically have a theft and an assault. The two would be separate offences. There's a direction from the Home Office, and I think because of the rise around the amount of violence that's being displayed to shop staff, to actually classify it as a robbery. Now, a robbery carries a far higher penalty. Now, that's all well and good, the Home Office saying that. The problem is you've got to get it through CPS. CPS, you've got to meet the points to prove, and you've got to meet the threshold tests and so forth. So we haven't yet, that I know of, been able to successfully argue that that is a robbery and not a theft and an assault. Now, we're arguing very fine points of law here in terms of the two. So there is a drive and there is a push to actually treat these offences far more seriously. The op-oding that we put in place, and we actually started this about 2 years ago when I arrived, because I couldn't quite understand why we weren't focusing on this, because for me, it bleeds over into the violence against women and girls. Majority, not all, it's a sweeping statement, but the vast majority of our shop staff are female. And you've got female staff that are being abused, threatened, assaulted. Violence against women and girls is not just solely nighttime economy or domestic abuse, it's everything. So for me, op-oding actually ticked a lot of boxes in that respect. So, and that's why we do a lot of those all-out days of action, and we are focusing on it because we do understand that for the shop staff, it is a serious thing. It is very impactful on them as to this level. And yes, I would agree, we are seeing more violence being perpetrated by people when they're out stealing. But rest assured, from a performance point of view, shoplifting is one of the easiest things for us to detect because there's normally CCTV, you've normally got a supporting victim, and we normally know who it is because our officers, these are repeat offenders, we know who they are, and we've got facial recognition now. We pop the image through and it comes up and says it's this bloke or her or person. So, for our perspective, we do go after the shoplifters and we do take a zero tolerance approach to it, but we just need people to report it. There are, and this isn't me shifting the blame, there are some companies that almost have a policy of not reporting things because they don't want to lose their shop staff for court appearances, or they just see it as an acceptable loss in terms of their retail, which is why they put alcohol at the front doors, wonder why it gets stolen, but they're prepared to accept the loss because they'll sell more of it than what they'll get stolen. But of course that then feeds the ASB and everything else that goes with it. So there are nuances to it, and there are things that we do with those stores and with those premises to target harden them and work with them. And we've done that. So every month now we have our tasking and coordination group, and we pick one specific retail hotspot that, based on volume, is the highest for the last 90 days. So I could probably say we have had the Co-op at Whitstable as being one, and we've had Zara. Yes. So what that means then is we put it on our tasking sheets, and our officers every day, every shift, will go into that shop. Canterbury Road, I think. Yeah. So our officers go into those shops daily, every day on their shift. They will go in, speak to the manager, speak to the staff, buy their refs, sit outside, eat their food, and then basically go away as a deterrent. And we then, whilst we're in there, we'll ask them if they had any shoplifting today. They'll say yes or no. If they have, we'll take the details, we'll identify the suspects, and we will go after them. And we do go after them. All right.
Thank you. And Laura, yes, thank you very much.
I was just going to remind as well what Inspector Stoner had said as well about the expansion of District Watch in the coming year. And I think that's going to be really key to this, because I think all the work that, be it the police or the partnership do, it does rely on that reporting and getting that information there. So I think that's something that, as and when that happens, we'll make sure that that's promoted so that people can engage with that, and hopefully that will have an impact.
Yes, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, is it possible to work with somebody like Usdaw, who are the Union for Shop Distributors and Allied Workers, and they do a lot around retail crime and protect, because their job is to protect their union members, and is it worth sort of liaising with them, because I know that they have been doing some work on it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something we can take away and look at.
Does it make a difference how much CCTV a shop has? Does that act as a deterrent? Because there's always the thing of the Amazon shop in London that has so much CCTV that you're just seen from every angle. They have no shoplifting. So is it also a matter of encouraging shopkeepers to get more CCTV or better CCTV?
Yes, obviously there is a cost, and we do understand the cost implications for stores that obviously have to buy the CCTV and install it. With the advances of technology now and AI and everything else, the quality of the CCTV is very, very good now, and we can put images through our facial recognition and it pretty much comes up 99% match to a particular person, as long as that person's known on our databases. So yes, of course, from a crime prevention point of view, the more CCTV you can have, the better. But it's the quality of the CCTV. But of course, you can't account for people wearing face masks or face coverings and things like that. But yes, definitely more CCTV in shops is a bonus.
Thank you. And Councillor Mellish.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering about why there's a mismatch between the really good story, the really good information that came out last night at the public meeting at the King's Hall, which was attended by over 500 people at that meeting, who all had the usual sort of stories, that, shall we say, of the seagull being beheaded, the 12, 10-year-old sisters being verbally abused and threatened with rape, old people being threatened. And the new one last night, to me, was a company that brings in 400 students a week to Herne Bay, to have a group of youth, and many from Germany, have a group of youth shouting Sieg Heil, and then going on to the coaches, which is a new development of actually attacking the students and the group leaders. They've also recently at the weekend had a toilet arson, and the toilet's been closed on a regular basis across Herne Bay. And the very positive story we've had tonight, and we had last night, coming from yourselves, from the police and from the council staff, how we actually get that story over to people. Because going through the report, I can only see perhaps one clear reference to Herne Bay, which is on the Purple Partnership and the youth provision, which is about the Herne Bay Taekwondo unit. In fact, Scott Taylor from Taylor Meats, our only butcher in town, I was out there last night giving out leaflets about the project. And that's the only one I can find, frankly, in terms of the whole document. So I wonder, there is a mismatch. There is a lot of good work going on, but it's not getting across to the population. They're feeling isolated and feeling left alone for some reason. How do we get that out? Obviously, there's a job for us as local councillors to get over that, but there's a professional way of getting that information out there as well. And we're obviously not doing that. And I know also through things like the ASB Professional Forum, which is going to be a great thing when it's put together. Hopefully it's going to reflect the whole of the district and not Canterbury City, which a lot of these actions seem to be focused on. Every reference is, even we're talking now about safe havens, it's city focused. And that is rather, so we got what we got. We got quarterly events, one-day events coming out as part of the Professional Forum. I take there will be one in each of the districts, one in each of the areas. So it's one consultation event per year at that rate. So that's the impression that comes out. I'm not saying it's going to be the way, but you see where I'm going with this. Yeah, is how do we break down that barrier? How do we get the real story out there? And and we can see new things happening over the coming year. How do we get those events that you're doing as police officers, increase in police staff, at Gordon Road? They're going to have a real effect in town, but how do you display that? How do we show the events? And from what I can see in the report, it's I've been a Herne Bayer, I suppose, is saying Herne Bay doesn't count anything. Yeah, we're the forgotten tribe, as it were, which is a lot of Herne Bay people like to dig that one in. Yeah, and of course it's not true. I know from what you said tonight, it's not true. But how do we tell them it's not true? How do we make it concrete to people?
Thank you, Councillor Mellish. Marie.
I think it's a fair point, and I think it's something that we will work on. I think there's been lots of good work in Herne Bay, in rural areas, and I'm sure next year Laura will make sure that the representation in the action plan reflects a variety of different areas. I think it's an important point about communications and comms and how we get the good news stories. I don't think as a partnership we've been on the front foot in terms of promoting some of the great work and the achievements. We drip feed joint press statements when there's been operations and some of the outcomes of those operations. But it's something that we'll take away and look at in terms of improving that communication plan.
Is before Paul comes in, if he wants to, is it also that a lot of this is caused by very small groups of... Oh, right, okay. Well, I'm asking you, is this one of the issues that what you're talking about is a much bigger picture? And in the report, we're covering a big area and we're looking... And what's actually happening in somewhere like Herne Bay is that you can have, 10 or less people making an absolute misery for a huge number of people. And I think that's one of the issues that we have is trying to deal with that very small group of people.
Undoubtedly, yes. So Project Platinum that we're launching hopefully next week is basically going to be a joint partnership approach. As I explained earlier on the clear, did I explain the clear whole build thing to you guys? I did, right, sorry. Short-term memory. So in essence, we're going to have daily operational meetings with all the partners around the table. We are going to, and we do this anyway, but we do it internally with the police. We don't always include the partners to this, but we trawl through the overnight crime. So every offence that occurs in the previous 24 hours, we will look at, and the same with any CADs that come in. We will then task those out to the various partners to say, well, let's go and do this. What can you tell us about this address? What can you bring to the table? And then the expectation is the following day they come back and update us. But we share the information live and with them at the time, so they've got everything they need to know. In terms of Herne Bay, so you're right, this document is quite a strategic overview of it. But in terms of Herne Bay and Whitstable, but predominantly Herne Bay, there are a very, very small minority of people. We know exactly who they are. They have been arrested. One has been arrested today for the incident that occurred in Victoria Park last week, which has probably gone on social media. I'm sure some of you have probably seen the videos of it. There are some people still outstanding. They've been identified. We're just having a game of hide and seek with them at the moment until we can find them. But they are, they are a very small minority that commit a disproportionate amount of that criminality. And they are the ones that, and I don't want to reveal my hand too much, but they are the ones that we are going to go after in terms of their housing, in terms of their benefits, in terms of their ASB. If we can give them community protection warnings, community protection notices, we will go after them to the point where their parents have to deal with their behaviour, because it will be the parents that I'm holding to account for their kids, because it will be the community protection warnings will be given to the parents, not the kids. So that's what we're looking to do moving forward, and it will be sustained over the next 6 to 12 months. You will see a massive increase in policing presence. We will be kicking doors in to the point of these people, and I make no bones about it, they will know we're coming until they stop committing the ASB and the crime that they are.
Thank you. And yes, because I think there are well-known cases, in fact many of us might have cases of this, where one family is moved and it changes a whole town. And yeah, I think we all probably have examples of that ourselves. Anyway, Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what you say, and I've also heard the officer's response that sort of the things that happen in Whitstable and Herne Bay will be more highlighted in the next partnership. But I just would like to remind you that we have a very peculiar situation in that so many children from Whitstable and Herne Bay come to Canterbury for their schooling, and not just 11 to 16, but post 16 education as well. So Canterbury has this large increase of young people, and I think that's part of the reason why there is sort of a lot of or seeming to be a lot of concentration on positive things like the football and things like that. So we know that there's two types of interesting things. One is the education, that there are no grammar schools on the coast. I know that that's been talked about for a long time. We have a grammar school system. Therefore, if your child gets a place at a grammar school, they have to get on the bus or you drive them in, and that is one reason. Then I think what happens, and I'd speak from experience, my children grew up in Herne Bay, obviously with me, one of their parents, and I actually watched, they then saw Canterbury as the place to go to for their social activities. So in the evening, it's not just Canterbury and tourists who are populating the bars and venues and so forth. It's young people from Herne Bay and Whitstable as well. But I do hear what you say, and I know the message has been received by the officers as well. But Canterbury is a bit of a magnet for young people, and I love that. I love the vibe that you get. I don't know how to say this. During certain campaigns, I have been on the street, high street of Canterbury, talking to people, and probably 7 times out of 10, people will say, "Oh, I don't live in Canterbury. I'm from Whitstable. I'm from Herne Bay or whatever," because they come to do their shopping as well. So we know that Canterbury is a magnet, and I suppose for that reason that there's some perception that we only care about Canterbury, but we don't. It is the district. We do care.
Yeah,
Tom, we do.
Councillor Mellish and then Laura.
I had to come back. And thank you, Connie. Thank you, Councillor Nolan. As one of the things as Herne Bay councillors, I'm sure Dan would agree, actually we want to try and keep our kids and our young people in Herne Bay, just that we don't have the facilities to do so. And they have to go, as you say, you have to go outside for their education. So therefore their knowledge of what we have to offer, or could offer, is taken away from us. So there aren't the resources in the town to keep them. I'm on the Herne Bay Coastal Community team, and one of our sort of projects is about how do you develop employment for young people. So when they leave school, when they leave the Canterbury school, they actually come to Herne Bay and work in Herne Bay and train in Herne Bay and develop their families in Herne Bay. And that's part of the problem as well. I fully accept what you're saying, that they can cause a problem in Canterbury as well, but let's also think about a way, as part of this project in some ways, of how do you keep young people in their hometowns, developing their hometowns, become part of that community. They don't feel the loyalty, therefore they can go off and do what they like.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mellish. And Laura.
I just want to come back and I hear the point on how we've referenced it in here, and I'm sorry if we haven't quite got that right on here. But what I do want to kind of assure all of you here of is, when you look at this document and we talk about conviction rate for environmental crime cases, we talk about some of the panels that we have, we talk about some of the operations that we've done. Those are across the district. They're not just focused in the Canterbury city centre area. We haven't perhaps given that level of detail in terms of where they've occurred by ward, etc. But those approaches are ones that we do adopt across the district. And it is, as Inspector Stoner said, this is kind of that overlying document. And if, I'm more than happy to have conversations with anyone that wants to kind of get the more detail in terms of what's happening in their areas.
Thank you. And it was something actually that I wanted to ask Councillor Nolan about as well, was where we've seen youth provision and the Taekwondo project, which has been very successful in Herne Bay. But I wanted to ask if perhaps you and the Cabinet could look at 106 provision again for youth provision, where we have 106 funding, because I was just a recent project in Herne Bay I've been looking at, and they've been told there's no 106 provision available, but I know there must be 106 from some of the developments, which is at the moment mainly channelled into the centre of Herne Bay. But actually what we could do with, and probably Whitstable as well, is that we have 106 channelled into East Herne Bay, West Herne Bay, across into Sea Salter, Whitstable Heights now, out into Greenhill, into Herne and Broomfield. So it's not just because children can't just get into sort of Memorial Park. So I just wondered if that was one thing you could take away, because I think it fits with this conversation on some of that 106 actually working with the KCC officers on where that youth provision is. Because if we could replicate this Taekwondo project in other sports across the coast, I think it would be very beneficial. Thank you.
Chair, I certainly will do that, yes.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you, Councillor Mellish. Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just picking up on the point that Councillor Mellish made, actually, is there's been quite a bit of talk about the urban areas and the coastal areas, but could you talk a bit about the rural areas as well, please? The villages, because rural crime happens as well. So I've got a few questions, I'm afraid. So at the beginning of this month, the government banned disposable vapes, which is a good thing. I'm sure we can all agree. I wonder going forward, how that's going to be monitored and enforced, and whether that's going to be one of the priorities going forward. Obviously, we need to do what we can to prevent youth addiction to nicotine and protect people's health and tackle pollution. On frauds and scams, so the KCC community warden in Surrey does a fantastic job on this, preventing, people in our communities from being targeted by scammers and fraudsters. It's especially urgent for elderly people to have that protection. So do we have any data on that at the moment? Is that a priority for us? And then the other one was on traffic safety outside of schools. This comes up time and time again in my casework, is, the safety outside of schools, children at risk of being hit by a car, dangerous parking. Outside Surrey Church of England Primary School, it's a major issue. So has there been any action on this issue, and will there be in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I'll probably go in reverse order because, again, my memory will, I'll forget half of it. So in relation to speeding around schools, yes, that is a priority. My child centre policing team do routinely go out and do speed checks in and around the schools at the key times. My only plea would be is that the community that are raising the concern raise it with the beat officer, the local beat officer. There is the single online home points of contact. So all of the wards have a named beat officer. There's an email address. They can contact them, email them. There is an undertaking. I don't know if it's quite been launched yet, but there's an undertaking that we will respond to those communications within 72 hours. So if they contact us via that means, we will get back to you in 72 hours. And then obviously, if we know about those concerns, we will deploy the PCSOs and the PC to that area, and we will do speed enforcement. So yes, that answers that one, I think. And then I've forgotten already. Fraud scams. Yeah. So again, they are fairly complex. We do a lot of work with trading standards around the fraud aspect of it. We do put out a lot of communication in relation to it. Yes, it is a priority. I haven't got any data that I can give you right now, but I'm more than happy to take that away and come back to you outside of the meeting with some facts and figures if you want, as to where that looks like. And then the other one was around vapes. So yes, we have done loads. Particularly, again, I have to be a bit careful what I say. There's particular addresses in the city that I think you will probably know. They've been targeted numerous times by my neighbourhood task force and trading standards. It's generally a trading standards led operation because they've got more powers around the seizure of those items. Yes, the law has changed, and yes, the local retailers are already finding loopholes and adapting their mode of business to circumnavigate that change of legislation. But there are further things that we're doing in the background to target those premises moving forward.
Thank you. And Laura?
I was just going to ask about the rural bit as well at the beginning of my question.
So the rural side of stuff, again, you have got named beat officers. We have to put the resources where the demand is greatest, and that is in the city to a large extent with the nighttime economy, based on sheer call volume and based on the data. And then naturally it follows Herne Bay and Whitstable. We do operations out in the rural, and we have done them, certainly like the things about Op Ratio, which is the bike marking events and the giving out of the air tags and things like that. We do speeding operations out in the rural villages as well. Again, my only plea to people is that if they are having those concerns, please report them. We do take them seriously, but we are to a large extent data led now. So, if I've got a significant issue based on data in one particular area, that is where I'm going to put my resources. But we do treat rural crime, and we do take rural crime seriously. And I'm hoping that there has been more visible presence out in the local communities. There should be lots of meetings and surgeries that the beat officers are doing out in the rural wards. And if they're not, I would love to have feedback because I'm being told they are.
Thank you. And Laura?
I just wanted to come back on the school. As a working parent and as a mother that drops off at school, I see some of this parking, and I see, the challenges that residents in our districts face. We do regular school ops. Our parking enforcement officers are out there on a weekly basis, we go round, we try and engage with different schools. We do that again based on where we're getting reports, and we will then go and kind of do operations outside of those schools. So we have a programme of those, but we have some flexibility to bend if we know there are particular areas. I know Sturry School is one that has come up fairly recently. The other thing is we do have a toolkit that I think some of you may have seen before, the Think Smart, Park Smart toolkit, and we are looking to relaunch that and look at, timing that with the start of the new academic year. It's kind of an awkward time to be doing it now. What we want to do is get some of the new parents. And also with part of that, we want to be doing that educational piece and getting the kids on board, because we can be there and we can do an operation today and that might stop someone parking irresponsibly or unsafely today, but we can't be at every school every day. So it's about us having that presence and doing that enforcement work, but also if we can educate people, and kids are great for telling you off. I know my children certainly do that. So I think if we can get the children, some of the adults, responsible adults on board with us, hopefully we get to a stage where it's also people are self-policing.
You. And Councillor Nolan.
Yeah, so it's really important to do the education part of it. So, Councillor Mackenzie, if you speak to me afterwards about that particular school, because I've worked with schools and sort of there's different strategies, to put in place. There is no magic panacea. I've gone out in the pouring rain and actually said to people, you can't park there. Oh, who are you to tell me? And I get my phone out and go to take a photograph of their car reg, and they leap in the car and move it. So I've spoken with taxi drivers. I'm sorry, some taxi drivers. I've spoken to them because they're actually parking on the zigzag lines that say no parking. They're amazed when I point this out to them. So it is actually about making people who are proactive. But parking outside schools, again, I can't praise more highly the enforcement officers. But there's too few of them to cover all the schools. But I've seen them doing their job, giving out tickets, getting verbal abuse for doing so. But they do try very hard. Rural crime, fly tipping, that's very much in my portfolio. That is a scourge, an absolute scourge for the rural areas. And I do feel very much for the farmers who go to feed their livestock and find that some so-and-so has dumped a whole load of stuff in their driveway to the gate. So that is very much sort of on the radar. But yeah, I just wanted to say schools, let's tackle that one together. I've now got a whole sort of range of strategies that I've picked up on, and we can talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chief Inspector Stoner, did you want to...
Sorry, Connie actually mentioned it was the fly tipping. We have got the Rural Task Force, Sergeant Ross Hayborn and Darren Walshaw. They do a lot of work in and around the rural communities around fly tipping and bespoke operations, and they do targeted enforcement on that as well. So again, if your communities do have concerns, there are other departments and teams that we can get on board to come and help us with that. All I need, or my plea, is feed it back into the local beat officers who can raise it up and we can then deal with it.
Yes, thank you very much. That's been something that blights my ward, as everyone knows on the panel here. And I've been very grateful to the rural policing team and our enforcement team for all the work they've done. But what ultimately has been difficulty has been getting witnesses who will stand up in court. And then, again, we're back with the CPS, aren't we? So yeah, we need our residents to go on the record with this as well, which is always a challenge. Anyway, Councillor Dupe.
Hi, thank you for your report. And mine is mostly comments, to be honest. Firstly, nothing to do with Blaine, because Blaine's obviously perfect, but Canterbury, I may have been known to imbibe in a sparkling fruit juice from time to time on a Friday night. And there has been a marked difference between this time last year and now in police presence, the feeling of safety, really. No one's tried to accost me. even when I wanted them to. So I'm really appreciative of that. The Ask Angela campaign, there's posters everywhere in the ladies, much appreciated. Whoever sort of gave funding for that, whether it's the bars or the police, whatever, thanks. Yeah, I've forgotten what else I was going to say, but also I think it was more of a query on the awareness and confidence in spotting the sign, reporting, referring for prevent radicalisation and concerns. It says you've seen an increase in the number of prevent referrals, but it's being monitored as to whether the awareness is an appropriate level. Does that mean that people are reporting it when it doesn't exist, or they're reporting it and it does because people are still being supported?
So there's been a few national things, and this is around obviously the prevent in terms of extremism and terrorism, things like that. Obviously, we had the horrific murders of the children up in Stockport. Some of that was Southport, sorry, not Stockport, Southport. Some of that was as part of the prevent mechanism, and we've seen a significant number of referrals since that incident, where obviously it's because it's been brought back into focus, into the spotlight. We're now seeing an exponential rise in the number of prevent referrals, which is obviously a positive thing. But there are prevent panels that are run where all of the individuals are discussed, and it's actually making sure that obviously when this objective was set, that was set before the Southport murders. But since then, we've seen a massive rise, and it's brought it back into focus, into spotlight. And it's around professionals from all agencies, from health, education, police, social services, referring these people in. And we can't take our foot off the pedal with that. We've got to get the referrals in so that they can be properly assessed and safeguarding put in place. So that's where that particular stream or avenue of work sits.
Does that work both ways though? Because hearing Councillor Mellish's comment about the abuse suffered by visitors to Ham Bay from locals, specifically suggesting Zeke Heil, that could possibly be reported as a radicalisation of youth.
Yes, it could.
Yeah. And also, just before I forget, I remembered the other thing that I wanted to say. And it was just like my parish councils are really chuffed with the help with Speedwatch. Anyway, that was a little segue there.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up, because that was raised last night around the foreign students, and we are not aware. We are aware of, we have Op Columbus in the city, which is a bespoke specific operation that targets hate crime and foreign students being targeted, because that has been a city problem. We are not aware of any incidents that have occurred on the coast, and it transpires that none of what was said last night has been reported to us. So unless it's reported to us, we can't deal with it. Whereas Op Columbus, and the problem we have with Op Columbus, of course, is that the foreign students are assaulted and then they go home, and their appetite to provide statements and prosecution and evidence dwindles because they're now back in Germany or France or wherever they've come from. So from us, it was that golden hour capture of the evidence to enable us to then go after the suspect, because it's the same suspects that are doing the theft shopliftings that are causing the ASB. There is a reoccurring theme across the spectrum. But again, we need to be reported for us to deal with it.
Can we report if we see something, even if nobody's there to give evidence? Say, like they're going back to Calais, because when I was a kid, it was always French students. And can we report on their behalf?
You can. Obviously, we look at evidence-led prosecutions. So if a victim isn't supported, so we do this a lot for domestic violence. So often domestic violence victims don't want to support, but we do look at standalone evidence-led prosecutions, and we look at the holistic picture from it. So we'll look at the injuries, although they're documented. So you can apply the same principle for other crimes as well, and we do. So in terms of reporting third party, yes, I would definitely say via 101 or via your local beat officer again. And as I said, there is an undertaking that we will acknowledge and respond to those messages within the 72-hour period. So the more information we can feed in, the more pieces of the puzzle and the picture that we can put together, so that we then know who to target.
I'm actually finding the beat officer surgeries are very good for getting residents to go to those. and passing on information, because it's one of the things, again, I think the 101 reporting is just too complicated.
Well, it is, and anecdotally, we took away from the meeting last night, we had officers at the back of the meeting who were trying to sign people up to My Community Voice, which is the two-way communication partnership. Out of the 400 people that turned up, we managed to sign up 9. So that's our preferred way of communicating with people. Now, we're hoping that some have taken the QR code away and they will subsequently sign up. But when we checked this morning, 9 people. And that's obviously the way we want to communicate. And it's a two-way communication. They can email into us, to their director, their beat officer, and we can have that open dialogue with them. So again, we've got to try and bridge that gap of how we build that rapport and relationship with the public and get them on board to help us.
Councillor Dupe, are you okay?
Hunky dory.
Thank you. So, Councillor Watkin.
Thanks, Chair. And I've got a few comments to make. Thanks again for coming to the community meeting, all of you and your colleagues in Herne Bay last night, and appreciate Connie being here as a cabinet member as well. Good discussion so far. I've got a couple of comments on the report itself we've seen, and actually by way of background, I was chair of a neighbourhood watch panel for a few years before I became a councillor, so I'm passionate about keeping our community safe, and I know very well just how tough the job of sort of community policing is. Things will flare up, and in addition, you've always got just a base level of bad behaviour, which sadly will go on, and crime, which you've got to deal with day in, day out. I think we as councillors really can help with the communication point. That was one of the reasons I was the chair of Neighbourhood Watch. Spent a lot of time as a volunteer, but it was a great way of getting information from the police back to the 25 people who came from that area, and they then spread it onto their roads. That's just one way of doing it. You've mentioned others, and I'll come on to a suggestion that came out from the meeting last night. But it was great, actually, after the meeting, several dozen people went and spoke directly to the police, as we had suggested they could do, and gave kind of evidence and reported new crimes for the ASB they've been seeing in Herne Bay recently. So yeah, that bit was very successful, even if sign up to Community Voice was maybe less so. But we will keep banging the drum on that, and you have our word on it. It's really important to make the communication flow two ways. So looking at the report and thinking about two-way communication, I think the report is good. The priorities, high level, seem right. It brings to life some of the projects you're doing. It's got an action plan in it. I think 2 things are missing. I think our fellow councillors tonight and building on that meeting last night and the build up to that community meeting, I think it's agreed that you do need to pull more out and say this is what's happening in Herne Bay. Equally rural, equally Whitstable, and not have it so city centric. But we know extra resources are coming to Herne Bay. You're flexing that now in light of the sort of ASB surge we're seeing. And that's good. But I do think in future versions of this plan, this should be something that should be on a website and people should be able to see without delving into scrutiny committee meetings. It wouldn't need a lot more just to have an overlay of towns. Yeah, there you go. So we can make that public, and it would be something we could refer to. But the report doesn't have what's available publicly at the moment does not have that town-specific overlay. People identify with their place, don't they, primarily, when you're talking about issues of crime and antisocial behaviour. And will they read a 20-page report and see one reference to Herne Bay and think all the other things which don't mention Herne Bay, they're going on in Herne Bay as well? I don't think they will. Ditto Whitstable, ditto the rural community. So I just think the report is good, but let's have a page on the various locations alongside it, saying what specifically is going on there. And it's something we should be able to refer back to, and maybe it's something that could get a quarterly refresh, which we could actually push people towards. Because I think the second thing that came out of the meeting last night was that people came forward with lots of examples, lots of ideas, which was great, then lots of intelligence for the police. So, tick, 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 all the things we wanted to happen from that meeting. But where we need to now go, where we didn't ticket at that meeting, and we weren't going to, is like, what happens next? What is the action plan? And if the documents we make publicly facing have a bit more detail on the kind of things that you are doing or going to do, I think that'd be a really good way, again, of engaging And when we hear of these terrible things, people say, I never see a policeman on the street, or are they doing anything? We can say, please, look, here's the link, have a read, and it will give people, I think, that reassurance. Because some of this is about fear of crime, and reassurance can conquer the fear of crime. Obviously, only actually visible law enforcement and preventative measures can tackle actual crime, but you take my point. And then just a few specific examples that I wanted to kind of raise. One was thinking about what is happening in Herne Bay may apply to other places as well. Are we able to maybe extend the public sector protection order that we've got on the seafront down Richmond Street and into Memorial Park, where a lot of bad things sadly are happening, ranging from vandalism to violence against wildlife? Matthew Scott, our Police and Crime Commissioner, was kind enough to come to Herne Bay recently, and I understand from him that at the moment, if you see a youth with a catapult, you can't do anything about that unless they're actually firing it at someone intending to cause harm at that time. The chances of that are so low. If we had a PSPO there and it was appropriately defined, you could just take that catapult away, even if it's not in use, with reasonable evidence to suggest that was as appropriate. As an example, maybe that's something that we could start to look at for the future to help tackle these issues and talk to the public about those kind of measures. Now, I know that would need a public consultation. I think you see now there's a lot of members of Herne Bay who would engage in that. Secondly, on that note, we've been doing some dispersal order work. Police target out there in the town last couple of weekends. There's a press release on the Kent Police site, which is good. I've shared that. People are positive about that. But again, there may be some things missing there. Like, for instance, can you confiscate items from the people you're dispersing as part of that? Sure, send them on the way, stop them hanging around the entrance to a OAP resident block where they're clearly scaring people. But can you take weapons? Can you take alcohol? I'd be interested to know with the dispersal orders that we have if that's possible. And then my final question really was, we had one person stand up last night from the community, and he actually had a similar issue happen several years ago in Sittingbourne, now lives here. Keith was his name, you'll remember. And he suggested setting up a WhatsApp group of engaged residents, kind of people who are there, the most modern form of technology, if you like, WhatsApp. It's the easiest to use. And they channel all the ASB into an admin there, and that admin passes it to you, just to make it easier than, rather than having to do the QR code, fill in a form, to make it easier to break down the barriers. Very successful in Sittingbourne, but of course that we can't say we can do that unless the police and the community safety partnership would say, yeah, we think that's a good idea. So we'd love to see some of these kind of ideas come forward, because I think the community is up for it in Herne Bay. I bet they're up for it in other places having troubles. So that's what I'd like to sort of push forward in the weeks ahead. And any comments made tonight, great. But if not, let us know what the kind of governance for doing some of these things are. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Watkins. Quite a lot there. So I know Marie wants to respond. On PSPOs, I think we're very split on those as a council. Some it's quite Marmite. Some people love them, some people hate them. When it came to overview recently, and we don't want to go all through that again tonight, but I would just remind everyone that not one enforcement case has been brought in the district as a result of any PSPO that's been put in place on the coastal area. So yes, so I'm sure Councillor Nolan can comment on that, because it's something that is in her gift to take that to Cabinet and to see what Cabinet thinks of that and see if that Cabinet wants to sponsor that. So I won't preempt you because you're the Cabinet member, but first of all, if Marie, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Watkins. I think with the community safety plan, what's on the web, the public-facing web, is the priorities. So I think, as I said to Councillor Mellish, I think we can look at comms around this, and I think as a partnership we need to shout more about what we're doing and what we're achieving. So we will look at that. I think that in terms of an action plan for Herne Bay. We were already working on an action plan. I think with action plans, there's obviously some very sensitive intelligence that's shared between partners as part of that action plan process and as part of discussing cases. So I think we can share high level information once we develop that, but the actual detail and because of GDPR and some of the data that's shared, obviously some of it is sensitive and we have to be careful with that. So, you know, just to reassure you, we were already working on an action plan. We've got the local health alliance there. We've got the neighbourhood tasking group looking at Heron Ward with a focus. The priorities for that group was already on young people and antisocial behaviour and crime. So there is work already in the pipeline for that. With the PSPO, again, we had early conversations and have had conversations with our cabinet member on the PSPO and with police. So, you know, all this intelligence that's coming through is the data that would support us being able to do a consultation and look at varying the existing PSPO. And again, it's something that we had discussed sort of previously, but I think the intelligence that is coming through can help that. With the enforcement of PSPOs and our contractor, it's coming the summer months. We always direct our contractor to the coast at summer months. So if there are particular hotspots and particular breaches within the existing PSPO boundary, then we can do pop-up days, engagement days, which we already plan in advance anyway. So I think Laura's team will pick that up. And Paul, would you like to come back on dispersal orders and confiscation?
Yeah, thanks, Marie. Just out of curiosity, were any of you here when we had the issues at Whitstable with the beach huts? There was a significant issue about two years ago around the theft and break-ins. Just out of curiosity, have you had any more recently?
Yes. But the guy was caught immediately because he was incredibly stupid. He had a fully tattooed face, had broken in and lived in a beach hut. In fact, it was my old beach hut that I sold. So he broke in, drank all their alcohol, got in the back, but came out the front with his tattooed face, denied it, but then he was drunk further along, and your police caught him within about an hour because he was sat there on a bench, quite drunk, with a tattooed face.
But generally, as a perception, because obviously at the time we had the issue, there was quite a significant amount of break-ins in the beach huts. And it was we had a public meeting, I think, didn't we? 120 odd people that turned up.
That was Tankerton, wasn't it? It was the Tankerton.
It was all the beach huts along.
Yeah, I'm the other end. I was the other end, but yes, I think I followed Tankerton Beach Huts group, and they haven't said there's been anything significant because normally you would see it there.
Well, again, so the point I'm trying to get to here is that we undertook a promise to solve that problem, and to a large extent we have, and we did. And my promise to you is that we will do the same now in Herne Bay with these issues that have arisen. I just need the time to put the plan into place to actually address those concerns. So in relation to the dispersal orders, I'll cover those now. So Section 34 of the Antisocial Behaviour and Crime and Policing Act, it allows an officer of the rank of inspector to authorise the use of dispersal powers in a specific location for a period not exceeding 48 hours. Normally, the inspector will do it for a defined period. It might be 12 hours, it might be 5 hours. It's whatever is reasonable and practicable. You can't just put in a 48-hour dispersal and walk away and forget about it. So the conditions for that, of course, is that there must have reasonable grounds to suspect. You don't actually have to have the antisocial behaviour. It's just the suspicion that a person's behaviour in the locality has contributed to or is likely to contribute to harassment, alarm or distress among the public. And then the inspector basically puts a defined geographical area and directs the officers to disperse people from that. The dispersal power does not carry with it any form of stop and search. You can be arrested if you refuse to leave the locality. So if we direct you to leave, and normally it's because they're drunk, we say go home. If they don't leave, they can then be arrested for that breach. That then unlocks powers of search, etc. But of course, that doesn't preclude officers from utilising their other stop and search powers that they've got under Section 1 of PACE or Section 23 of the Misuse of Drugs Act. The authorities that you might be thinking about are Section 60s, which are normally off the back of serious violent crime, i.e. we think there's going to be a stabbing, or we think there's going to be a gang-related fight, or there has been a serious violent crime. We can then, it's the same guidance, it's a defined location for a set period of time, and basically what that allows police officers to do is not form any suspicion. It's a blanket stop and search. Now that comes with a lot of issues for the local community, because depending on where we put that Section 60, some parts of the community do not like stop and search, and we have to be very balanced and nuanced about it, and it is subject to oversight and scrutiny by a superintendent afterwards. But that allows officers to basically stop and search everybody. So yeah, so going back to, we can seize alcohol. No, we can seize catapults if, as has already been alluded, they are being used for, but to be honest with you, if they're firing at wildlife, I'd expect them to be arrested, if I'm brutally honest with you, not just the catapult seized. So yeah, there is a bit of a loophole in relation to the legislation, because it's all around what their intent is with that item, because the catapult is not a made offensive weapon as such. It's designed for something else in the eyes of the law. So yes, hopefully that covers dispersals. We have put in dispersal orders. We will continue to put dispersal orders in, but dispersal orders are only good if you've got the people to go in and enforce it and disperse people from the area. That's the key, and that's where the neighbourhood task force and the uplift of officers going into the coast will be key.
It makes you wonder in this day and age why someone's innocently carrying a catapult, though. Perhaps what we should be
So
yeah,
what you have to bear in mind is the
maybe-
Offensive Weapons Act goes back to the
Exactly,
1960s, and it hasn't been updated
So maybe
since.
what we should be doing then is lobbying our MPs for a change in the law, because as we know, a lot of our issues actually stem from Parliament, and we need changes in the law. But yeah, I think it's hard to imagine people innocently walking around Memorial Park wanting to fish with a catapult. But yes, thank you, Councillor Smith. Yeah, maybe that's what they're doing. But Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Watkins, you referenced me. I'm in listening mode. I have written this down. But as the Chair says, we are a council that is very divided on the whole PSPO situation. But yeah, I will take it back, absolutely.
Thank you. But I think also we need to be lobbying our MPs, our two MPs, for a change in the law on catapults, because that makes the police's life much easier if you do not carry a catapult as an innocent thing that you're walking around with. So yeah, we also need to be doing both things. Thank you anyway. Are you okay with that, Councillor Watkins? Thank you very much. And Councillor Buckman.
Okay, thanks for that. I think before I start anything, I think it's important to realise it's, you know, most youths and younger people are fine and okay, and it is, again, they're like a small minority, really. I would also like to pick up what Councillor Watkins and Councillor Mellish reckoned. When I read that report, the first thing that did stick out was no mention of Herne Bay or one word, and then I read it again, and then it actually became even more Canterbury city-centric, not even Canterbury district. It was just the middle bit, the pedestrian part. But that's by the way. Just a couple of things on actually what Councillor Nolan was saying about the enforcement. So I think it was either since the last meeting we had about this. I was in the high street, and the enforcement officer there is giving someone a ticket for cycling. And obviously he can't search him for his address or whatever, and he wouldn't give any information up, and he gave him the ticket, and the guy ripped it up, threw it off, and then he said, oh, I'll give you a ticket for littering. and he just cycled off. So my question would be, do you have any data on unpaid fines through that way? And then a question for, you don't have to give it out, you probably haven't got it now, at some point. And then any information on perpetrators of crime that are coming in from out of the area, sort of like Thanet or Medway, coming into Canterbury, and then oppositely, being dispersed and going to commit their crimes in Medway or Thanet elsewhere. Do you ever sort of collect data on where they live, basically? And are they coming into the city to do it, or are they local? It was good to hear that you mentioned about youth, a lot of youth provision, and how that sort of helps tackle these sort of things. I noticed, I think a lot of us have sat through like planning and overview, and I think there was a youth hub going to be positioned in the city, but that seems to be very quiet at the moment. Obviously Thannington with the rugby up there, so that's good. And also there is a grant available at the moment for green sport that like charities and communities can apply for to help like with sports provision. I don't know what sort of sport, but cycling, walking, whatever. So that was that point. But there's more seriously. So my daughter did work experience at the Prince of Wales Centre a couple of weeks ago. So she's walking back from Northgate, and she got to near the Falstaff, Bishop's Finger, and men came up to her, said, "Oh, doing a survey on knife crime. What do you think?" And they stood in front of her, and she said, "Oh, no, whatever, not interested." And then they wouldn't let her pass for a little bit. And she, she's 17, or she's actually 17 next week, but so she managed to get round them, get away. And then she told us about it when she got in, and I was like, "Well, have you reported it?" "No." And then we had we thought about is it worth reporting, because nothing actually happened as such. There was no crime as such. And then we thought again, and just because she got away from it, it doesn't mean the next person would. So by reporting something like that, it makes you aware, and then the police person, he phoned back, I think, in a couple of days later. Once we did the crime reference number, filled that in. So he's phoned up a couple of times to speak to her, so fair enough. But so listening to everybody here, it's all about this sort of communication and how getting people to report things, and as a cabinet leading council or vice versa, we've done a lot of advertising on buses about, putting food in black bins, for instance, I've done. And other stuff that is, it's important, but surely we should be leading some sort of campaign, and we can stick it on buses, we can put leaflets out, we can put an advert in Kentish media, through K Media, to how the importance of reporting something that's happened. Because I know you mentioned the spike, my daughter's quite aware of, because she's going on holiday soon, about this cup or the lid that you put on drinks. And also, and isn't that the chemicals only last a few hours anyway, so you need to have that blood test quite quick. But it is a real importance that even if nothing has happened, it's to be neighbourly, protect the next person. What could just make it where if nothing happens, nothing happens. But when people say, "Oh, there's no point because nothing happens," it might not happen to you, but it can happen to the next person. And I just think we've got an opportunity. We could stick things on the park and ride buses that go up and down. But adverts and things like that. I mean, that's for you to sort out. But the reporting of crime, as you say, because then the statistics are swayed there. And if not reporting, you don't know what's going on. So that way would help. And then you can put these resources in the areas where these are happening, in the hotspots and stuff. But yeah, so that would be my recommendation, is to for the Cabinet Council to increase their communication and make it properly visible. But that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckman. I think what you're saying is that too many people take crime for granted, or accept, not for granted, but they accept when that things happen to them rather than them taking action against it. Who wants to respond on that? And
well, I don't mind jumping in. So, in relation to the media, we do have a strategy, a corporate strategy. So we do have Twitter accounts, but I think Twitter is dying or dead to a certain extent. We missed the boat in terms of Facebook, like individual districts having their own Facebook pages, but we do have a corporate one. Now, we use that a lot, but we use it for what we have to be very mindful of is saturating the market with messages. So we use it for high-risk missing persons where there is an imminent threat to life, because we want people to see that. If we put out social media posts every hour on the hour and we flood it, those really important ones will get missed. So the corporate comms strategy around it is that there's only certain things that we will put out. So you will see more stuff around Herne Bay because that is very political, very topical at the moment. But equally, we can't and we won't publicise everything, which unfortunately goes against us because we're then not telling everyone what we're doing. But it brings me back to the My Community Voice, because the My Community Voice can be set up in a way that you only receive updates and alerts for your particular road or your particular village or town, wherever you live. And we can target that a lot better, and we can update you a lot more on what we're doing locally around that community, and you can then come back to us as well. So yeah, we don't go on the Facebook. We do read the Facebook posts. We are on them, but you know, we don't respond to those media posts on there for obvious reasons. It just descends into a you said, she said, you did, why did you, so forth. So we are very cognizant of that fact.
But I think also what, unless I'm wrong, Councillor Buckman, is what you're saying is that we could use, where we advertise on buses, we could actually put the QR code on the buses, or we could say, you know, don't forget to report, even, just report, keep reporting. But Councillor Buckman, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I think it's more, I would call it analogue advertising, because I think, you know, younger people, whatever we put out on social media, they'll have a different platform that they would use for stuff anyway, and they're pretty much aware. So whether it's, you know, putting in, you know, obviously like the council office at the free universities, let's say buses, just so, you know, it's like that sort of the, out of your perception, it's your perception filter. So it's there, but it's not in your face, but you just still pick it up because it's just there, but you see it. But you don't, it's not, you're not bombarded with it. But that's not really a police thing. I was saying that was more to be like council and council-led. Thanks.
Marie.
Thank you. We've done targeted stuff before, so we've done it with freshers and new students coming along. We've done that, here's how you report, you know, X, Y and Z. We've done it in our tenant newsletters, but it's definitely something that we can take away. We'll have a chat with Leo. We'll have a chat with our cabinet member and also pick it up with Paul. But I'm sure there's a way of promoting more, you know, where to report things, how to report things, because it's something that comes up all the time, especially from a housing point of view, in terms of getting evidence. And there is that culture, you know, people do worry about reporting things. They do worry about repercussions. So there is a bit of sort of building that public confidence and making it easier. So our commitment tonight is that we'll take that away and look at it. And on the data issue of unpaid FPNs or FPNs that have been ripped up and not been issued, we'll certainly look at that and feed that back to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marie. And Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Chair. So coming towards the end of the meeting, obviously most things I was going to raise have already been raised. So obviously I'm a Whitstable councillor. I was going to raise issue, reporting back on what's happening in Whitstable would be fantastic. And I think I raised it at the chair's briefing that we had. And I think Laura sort of said, well, it's kind of a good thing that we're not focusing on Whitstable. It's indicative of the measures that you have put in place when we did have all those issues a few years ago are bearing fruit. And it's certainly great seeing the policeman around, seeing Jordan around, seeing him quite regularly going around the town. And I think it's really is making a difference. And I do think things have improved. And I'd like to also reinforce what Councillor Carnac was saying about youth provision, and we do need more of that. We need more of that in Whitstable. We lost our wonderful youth centre with the manager, who was absolutely fantastic. And Jordan did mention that was a great, those youth club events or youth club gatherings were a great place for him to get to know the young people who, you know, might some of the potential troublemaking ones. and get sort of an informal relationship with the young people. So it would be good to see more of that. We do get quite a bit of, and we've talked a bit about speeding near schools, but we do get people speeding, dangerous driving, careless driving, illegal vehicles, you know, zipping through the centre of town and all that kind of thing. What can you actually do about that? I mean, I suspect you haven't got an awful lot of resources to deal with those sorts of issues. There is a feeling like, yes, it happens and nobody does anything about it. I don't know how we would report that. Is it just this informal, you know, chatting, going along and meeting with, say, Jordan and reporting and emailing through My Community Voice and that sort of thing? But do you have many resources who can actually tackle this sort of thing? It's the speeding at night, doing the sort of loop around Whitstable and Herne Bay and the Bends and all those sorts of matters.
So on that particular point, obviously we do, and we do target operations. At the moment, we've got what's called a forced tactical bidding, so an FFTCG is what it's called, and that basically means that we've put Herne Bay and Whitstable as on a RAG assessment red. So what that allows us to do is then draw upon resources from around the county to come up to the coast to target the issues that we've got. So you'll see an increase in firearms, you'll see an increase in traffic cars, you'll see an increase in dog units. It's almost like they default to that particular location throughout their shifts to supplement and support the work that we're doing. So again, when you've got traffic officers in Whitstable, they will more likely inclined to deal with the traffic offences. It's difficult to discuss individual things, but it's certainly something we can look at and take away, and I'd urge you to feed back into Jordan. So if it is a particular time where you've got the boy races, tearing around the streets, we can do target operations around those, and it comes back again to the Section 59 powers that we utilise for those are the same powers as we use for the off-road. If it's being driven in an antisocial manner, we can issue the warnings and we can seize their cars. Even if they're insured and taxed and MOT'd and everything else. If it's being driven antisocially, we can seize it, and we have seized them in the past. But it's probably something, by the sounds of it, we need to do more of.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. The other thing you can do is to speak to your KCC councillor to see whether a speed camera can be put up to catch it. Speed cameras are very, very effective, and there is a myth that goes round that you're not done for speeding if you're sort of like just 1% over kind of thing. And I can testify that I was caught doing 31 miles an hour along Pin Hill by the speed camera, and I had to pay a fine and attend online training. And I now have a little sort of digit thing on my little gizmo on my car that when I go to 30, it pings, and it's very good. It's very effective. It means that I think, oh, hang on a minute, you know, I'm getting too absorbed in the music that's playing and whatever, and I'm doing 31 and I get caught again. So do speak to your KCC councillor, and also I think, you know, sort of making sure that people are aware that there is this gizmo on their cars. Apparently all cars have them now, I didn't know, that will actually indicate if they accidentally are approaching the 30-mile speed limit. Well,
Thank you. And Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, and thank you for coming this evening and staying all this time to my question. So like many others, I've got a multi-part question, so please bear with me. So the first part is about graffiti. In the report, it talks about the rapid response to graffiti and removal of that, but what it doesn't talk about is whether that actually deters further instances, and particularly the individual who was found guilty in his absence, if that conviction deterred him from undertaking further graffiti. The second point, and this is becoming a habit, I agree with Councillor Watkins and many others in respect of catapults. And I note what everyone said about crimes against wildlife involving catapults. But it was reported to me by a resident in my ward in Canterbury, and she has also reported to the police, that a catapult was used and aimed at her bedroom window whilst she was in the house, an older lady living alone, and shattered the outer pane. She ended her engagement with the police with the view that nothing could happen because it was a catapult and it wasn't a crime against wildlife, it was against property. So I just wondered if there was any comment on that. The third point is I'm really pleased we've talked about traffic outside schools today. because I was at St Stephen's Infant School earlier this week meeting their school council, and the 4 to 7-year-olds are indeed concerned. And one of the issues they asked us to take forward is the bad parking by parents outside the school, which they're aware of, they're concerned about, and they said they were frightened by in some cases. And I just wanted to pick up on the point raised in the answer to the previous question from Councillor Mackenzie about that, about self-policing. I know that is probably preferable in terms of resourcing, but I also understand from residents that there are instances of those parking becoming quite aggressive to those who point out they're in the wrong. And some of those residents are themselves elderly and vulnerable and may not be able to do that. And you'll be pleased to know my last point also relates to something that Councillor Mackenzie, thank you, raised earlier about fly tipping. There's been lots of talk about it in the rural areas outside of Canterbury, but in my ward, which is a residential area in Canterbury, this is also an ongoing concern and one that there are hotspots, people are aware of them, people are reporting them. And while there's a 100% conviction rate in the report for environmental crimes, what percentage aren't able to go forward to prosecution, and how can we address those? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Forrester. So, Laura, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so if I can take your point on school ops first, and the self-policing, I just want to be clear, what I'm not saying is that we just leave it to the residents, the families that are there, but I think what we have found, and it is about that education piece, we simply don't have the resource to be at every school every day, and it's about empowering people to, where they feel comfortable, make that challenge, and also use the voice of the young people. You know, as you're saying, you're going to a school council, the children are concerned about this. It's about kind of making sure that they're aware of it and that their voices are heard in this. And I think the most powerful voice in this as a parent or someone who's doing this might actually be that 4 to 7-year-old, was it you said, that turn around and going, actually, I'm scared. You know, that's impactful for anyone, isn't it? So I think it's about using those voices, but absolutely we will continue to have a programme of school ops because we recognise it's an issue all around the district. In terms of fly tipping, what I would say on that is, I don't have the data in terms of how many have not gone forward into prosecution. That's something I can take away and have a look at. But the greatest challenge with fly tipping is always the evidence. And, you know, my team will go out and they respond really quickly. I'm thinking of last week, I think it was, there was a report of some fly tipping in Hoath, and they were out within a matter of hours to go out and try and do the investigation. Where we can get evidence of who is responsible for it, we will absolutely pursue that. The challenge is quite often we go out there and there is nothing, you know, there's no identifiable evidence for us to be able to take away. And we've already spoken about the challenges of people witnessing it and being willing to come forward and say, yep, I saw a van and here's the reg, or, you know, anything along those lines. So we do try where possible, where we are able to get that evidence, we do pursue it. That's standard. Finally, on your pit on graffiti and deterrence, yes, where we've prosecuted, and that's part of the reason why we also publicise that, is to let people know. You know, the work of the graffiti team, you know, quite a few years ago, we brought the in-house graffiti team, and it has had a tremendous impact. And their role is not just to do that clearance. They do those investigations. And I think actually, if we look at that prosecution, that was one where they worked really closely with our central control unit to kind of say we were having issues. Central control let us know when something was happening. Our officers were able to go down, we were able to identify people. So yes, that prosecution has deterred that individual. We hope by also publicising it, it will deter other people. But the other thing that we do on our graffiti work, it's not just about removing it, it's about trying to design it out. So what can we do to stop this happening again? And that might be, we've had initiatives where we've put vinyls up, because actually you can't graffiti onto a vinyl. It might be that it is just a bit of a thing of wearing people down. And every time they go and put a tag, we go and overpaint it within a couple of hours. So it's about using different tactics. It's about working with the community and going, actually, there have been some areas where we've done murals because you put something there of beauty, people take pride of it. So there's different deterrence which is going on, but where we do enforce, yes, we found we're not getting repeat offenders.
Thank you. And yes.
So in relation to the catapult, slightly concerning, if you are in possession of a catapult and you have committed criminal damage, you will be arrested. I don't understand why we would tell anybody to the contrary. That's somewhat concerning. Even if you haven't committed any damage, but your intent is to commit damage, it's still an offence. Obviously, we won't know your intent until we speak to you. So yeah, my message quite clearly is that if you are in possession of a catapult and you are there to commit criminal damage, you will be arrested. Anecdotally, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but the fly tipping issue, and I do wonder this is me now as Paul speaking, not as a representative of Kent Police. I recently tried to get my fridge freezer collected. It was going to take 2 months for the council to come and collect it at a cost of £35. And I noticed the council was still insisting that we book slots at my local tip, and also they've started charging for hardcore. I do wonder if council policy is fueling a rise in fly tipping. Is that putting people off from going to the tip and dumping it legally? I don't know. But it's something that perhaps we need to consider from a wider perspective. If we've seen an increase in fly tipping, is it because of local policies we've got in place that we could actually change and affect? I don't know. But I'll put my corporate head back on now and leave that with you.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's KCC that operates they call them recycling centres. I still call it the tip. I noticed that hardcore now is one of the ones that's fly tipped because you have to pay for it. I think it's also the fact, because you see it all the time in Facebook, people just want to get rid of something and they put on Facebook, does anybody want to come and take this away? And so you get unregulated people saying that they will do that. Of course, I always check to make sure that the operative is regulated. If I have anything that needs to go taken away, but fridges and freezers are a big problem because of the innards of them and that. And again, so Councillor Forrester, the same offer is open to you. I'd love to come and talk to you and St Stephen's School about things that have worked elsewhere. And it's very sad to hear that children are scared by parking. Very sad indeed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Do we have any final questions? No? Well, thank you all very, very much. That's been, I think, a very in-depth discussion this evening, and we've got a lot out of it. So we're noting this report, so what's in the report for 24-25 and priorities and actions for 25-26. I think what we would like to have added into the priorities and actions is that we've said adding more information on Herne Bay and Whitstable to the report, and also the rural areas, and maybe having that overlay, if we can do anything on the website. It's on the website anyway, not just the reports on the website, obviously, but there's actually more than that. There is actually a community safety partnership section on the website, but whether there's any opportunity to look at that and maybe see if that could work a bit better. Then Councillor, and then we've got data. Marie, you're going to get, or Laura, you're going to get data for fraud reporting, the torn up FPNs, and I think there was another one. Then we also had Councillor Buckman asking about the better communication as well on how to get crime reported, that maybe that could be looked at. And then Councillor Nolan, because the next stage in the process is Cabinet will have sight of this report and feedback. So I know that Councillor Nolan has already said she's prepared, happy to talk to councillors with parking issues at schools to see if there's any support with those. Also, looking at 106 funding and how maybe some of that could be reapportioned and redirected. And the PSPO as well, and some other suggestions around that maybe could be looked at over the coming months. And I think that's pretty much everything we've discussed this evening. So if everyone's happy with that, and we think with just general assent that goes off to Cabinet, okay, right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pippa. Okay, everyone. Well, that's been a long meeting. I think we can now see why this came into a call-in slot, because otherwise the thought of having to follow it with finance projects and performance this evening, I think would be one step too many. So instead, we will return on Wednesday, 3rd of September at 7 p.m. to do exactly that, look at finance, projects and performance. So I wish you all a lovely summer and we will be back in September. So thank you all very much. And there's no other urgent business. So good night, everyone.